The Zrakarian Empire had dominated the Orion Arm for over 3,000 years. Their massive warships carved paths through the stars, their technology so advanced that most species surrendered without firing a single shot. The Zrakarians considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution. Tall, reptilian beings with gleaming silver scales and minds, capable of processing information at speeds that would make Earth's supercomputers seem like abacuses. Admiral Vorzak stood on the command deck of the Inevitable Dominance, flagship of the Zrakarian fleet. His clawed fingers tapped impatiently against the polished obsidian of his command console as he studied the holographic display of a small blue planet on the edge of what the Empire considered civilized space. "This is the world they call Earth," he said, addressing the assembled High Command. Our long-range scanners detected unusual energy signatures emanating from their system 6 cycles ago. Sub-Commander Telzer flicked his tongue dismissively. Another primitive species attempting to harness nuclear power. How quaint. Perhaps, Vorzax replied. But our preliminary analysis suggests they progressed from chemical rockets to rudimentary ion propulsion in less than one of their centuries. Their rate of technological advancement is concerning. The gathered officers exchanged glances. Most species took millennia to make such leaps. The Zrakarians themselves had evolved their technology gradually over countless generations, each advance building methodically upon the last. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" asked Strategic Overseer Krell, her scales shifting to a thoughtful blue hue. "Observation, for now. We've deployed stealth satellites throughout their system. We'll monitor their progress and determine if they represent a potential threat or a species worthy of integration. Integration. The word hung in the air. It was the Zrakarian euphemism for conquest, the process by which they absorbed useful species into their empire and relegated others to servitude. "Very well," Krell nodded. "Keep me informed of any significant developments." 17 Earth years passed. The Zrakarians watched as humans established colonies on their moon and neighboring planet, as they sent probes deeper into their own system, as they developed more efficient propulsion systems. But nothing suggested they were close to achieving true interstellar flight. The Empire classified Earth as a Level 3 civilization, technologically advancing but confined to their own system and therefore of minimal interest. Until the day everything changed. "Admiral." The voice of Junior Officer Mex crackled through Vorzax's personal communicator. "Long-range sensors have detected a vessel approaching the outer boundary of Zrakarian space." Vorzax, now Supreme Commander of the Third Fleet, frowned. "Origin." "Earth, sir." The Admiral nearly dropped his communicator. "Impossible. They don't have the technology for interstellar travel." "The sensor readings are definitive, sir. The vessel bears Earth markings and matches designs we've observed in their orbital facilities." Within moments, Vorzax stood on the command deck, staring at the tactical display. The human vessel was small, absurdly so for an interstellar craft, and appeared to be using some form of conventional propulsion that shouldn't have allowed it to travel between star systems in less than several lifetimes. "How?" he demanded of his science officers. "How did they get here?" Science Director Zilax adjusted her optical enhancers. "Unknown, Supreme Commander. Our readings indicate no warp signature, no gravitational distortion, no evidence of any known FTL technology. Yet here they are, approximately 22 light-years from their home system. A fluke, perhaps," offered Telzar, now elevated to Commander. "They may have discovered some primitive method of faster-than-light travel through sheer luck." Vorzax narrowed his vertical pupils. "Luck or not, they've entered our territory without permission. This cannot stand. Hail them." The communications officer worked her console. "Channel open. Supreme Commander." Vorzax straightened his posture, his 7-foot frame imposing even through a transmission. "Attention, Earth vessel. You have violated sovereign Zrakarian space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose immediately." The view screen flickered, revealing a human female with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal ornamentation. "Greetings, Zrakarian vessel. I am Captain Maya Chen of the Earth ship Endeavor. We come in peace as representatives of the United Earth Alliance." Vorzax's scales rippled with barely contained amusement. The human ship was a fraction of the size of even the smallest Zrakarian patrol vessel. Its hull appeared to be made of conventional materials, titanium alloys, and carbon composites, with no evidence of the advanced shield technology or weapon systems that define modern interstellar craft. "Captain Chen," Vorzax replied, unable to keep a note of condescension from his voice. "Your presence here is unexpected. Earth is not recognized as a spacefaring civilization by the Zrakarian Empire. Your vessel appears inadequate for interstellar travel. How did you reach our territory?" The human captain smiled slightly. "We have recently developed certain propulsion technologies that allow us efficient travel between stars. We hope to establish diplomatic relations with your empire as we begin our exploration of the galaxy." Behind Vorzax, several officers failed to suppress their laughter. The human ship looked like a child's toy compared to the massive Zrakarian warships surrounding it. "Diplomatic relations," Telzar whispered loud enough for Vorzax to hear. "They should be begging for our protection." Vorzax silenced him with a gesture. Something about this situation felt wrong. The humans shouldn't have been able to travel this far with their level of technology, yet here they were. And they showed no fear, despite being completely outmatched. "Your request will be considered," Vorzax told the human captain. "In the meantime, power down your engines and prepare to be escorted to our nearest outpost for inspection. Any deviation from the course we provide will be considered hostile action." Captain Chen's expression remained pleasant but firm. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Supreme Commander. We are on a scheduled diplomatic mission and must maintain our autonomy. However, we would be happy to transmit our ship specifications and mission parameters as a show of good faith." Vorzax felt a flicker of anger. How dare this primitive species refuse a direct order? "Captain Chen, perhaps I wasn't clear. This is not a request. Your vessel is now under the jurisdiction of the Zrakarian Empire. Comply immediately or face the consequences." The human's smile faded. "I understand, Supreme Commander. Before you take any action, however, I should inform you that the Endeavor is equipped with a quantum displacement drive." Science Director Zulax let out a hiss of dismissal. "Quantum displacement? Theoretical at best. No species has successfully stabilized quantum fields at the macro level." Vorzax shared her skepticism, but maintained his authoritative demeanor. "Captain Chen, your bluffs do not impress us. You have one final opportunity to comply." The human captain sighed. "Very well. A demonstration, then." Before Vorzax could respond, the small Earth vessel began to emit a strange, pulsating energy signature. The tactical display flickered, and alarms blared throughout the command deck. "What's happening?" Vorzax demanded. "Unknown energy buildup," reported the sensor officer, her claws flying over the console. "The field is unlike anything in our database. It's creating some kind of localized quantum disturbance." Vorzax watched in disbelief as the tiny human ship was enveloped in a shimmering blue field. For a moment, it seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, afterimages stretching across space like echoes. Then, in an instant, it vanished. "Find it," Vorzax roared. "Full sensor sweep." "Sir," the sensor officer's voice faltered. "The Earth vessel has. It's..." "Speak, officer." "It's directly behind us, sir, inside our defensive perimeter. Less than 100 meters from our primary engine core." "Impossible. No technology should have allowed such precise spatial manipulation. Even the Zrakarians, with all their advanced science, had never achieved instantaneous point-to-point transportation on this scale." The view screen activated again, showing Captain Chen, still calm and collected. "As I was saying, Supreme Commander, The quantum displacement drive allows us to relocate our vessel by manipulating the quantum state of every particle simultaneously. We can effectively choose our position in spacetime within certain limitations. Vorzax's mind raced. If the humans had truly mastered this technology, they could bypass any conventional defense. They could position weapons directly adjacent to vital systems. They could. "Sir," Telzar's voice cut through his thoughts. New contacts appearing throughout the fleet formation. The tactical display transformed into chaos as hundreds, then thousands of new signatures materialized throughout Srikarian space. Earth ships of various sizes and configurations, all appearing simultaneously, all equipped with the same pulsating energy fields. "This is Admiral Eliza Jackson of the Earth Defense Force," a new voice announced over the fleet-wide channel. "The vessels you now see represent approximately 10% of our available fleet. Each is equipped with the same quantum displacement technology as the Endeavor. Each can reposition itself anywhere within this star system in milliseconds." Vorzax stood frozen, watching as the supposedly primitive humans had, in an instant, surrounded his entire fleet with vessels that could strike anywhere, anytime, with no warning and no defense. "We didn't come here seeking conflict," Supreme Commander, Captain Chen said quietly. "But we are prepared for it if necessary. Now, perhaps we can discuss diplomatic relations more equitably." For the first time in his long career, Supreme Commander Vorzax of the mighty Srikarian Empire found himself utterly speechless. The humans hadn't just caught up to Srikarian technology. They had leapfrogged it entirely, developing capabilities his species had deemed impossible. And they had done it while the Empire watched, dismissing them as primitives barely worth noticing. The Empire had made a catastrophic error in judgment. And now, the consequences of that error surrounded them on all sides, waiting for Vorzax's next move. Supreme Commander Vorzax's claws dug into his command console, leaving deep gouges in the previously immaculate surface. Around him, his officers stood in stunned silence, their scales shifting through colors of shock, fear, and confusion. The tactical display showed what should have been impossible. Thousands of human vessels materialized throughout the Srikarian formation, each one pulsing with the strange energy of their quantum displacement drive. "Shields at maximum," Vorzax finally ordered, his voice unnaturally calm. "Weapons systems on standby. Do not fire unless fired upon." "Sir," Telzar whispered, "we're completely surrounded. They could position their ships directly beside our reactor cores before we could respond." "I'm aware of our tactical situation, Commander." Vorzax turned back to the view screen where Captain Chen of the Earth ship Endeavor waited patiently. "It seems we have underestimated your species, Captain." "A common mistake, Supreme Commander," Chen replied without a hint of smugness. "Humanity has often been judged by appearances rather than potential." Vorzax nodded slowly, his tactical mind already analyzing this new reality. "You could have attacked without warning. Why the demonstration? Why announce yourselves at all?" Admiral Jackson, the stern-faced human who commanded their fleet, appeared on a split screen beside Chen. "Because unlike some species we've encountered, we don't believe technological superiority justifies unprovoked aggression. We came here to establish relations, not to conquer." Science Director Zilax moved to Vorzax's side, her voice low. "Supreme Commander, our initial scans of their vessels show energy readings off our measurable scales. The quantum field they've generated is stable at a level our theorists deemed impossible." "How?" Vorzax demanded. "How did they develop this technology without our knowledge?" "Unknown, sir, but they're not just decades ahead of where we estimated them to be. They're centuries beyond, at least in this specific technology." Vorzax took a deep breath, his pride warring with his duty to the Empire. "Admiral Jackson, Captain Chen, I propose a temporary cessation of hostilities while we discuss the situation. Our respective governments should be involved in any formal diplomatic arrangements." "Agreed," Jackson nodded. "We'll maintain our current positions, but we'll take no aggressive action as long as your fleet does the same." As communication officers on both sides worked to establish secure channels to their respective governments, Vorzax called an emergency meeting of his command staff in the strategy chamber adjacent to the bridge. "How did we miss this?" he demanded once the doors had sealed. "We've been monitoring Earth for decades. There was no indication they possessed this level of technology." Strategic Overseer Krell, who had been summoned from her quarters, shook her head. "They must have developed it in secret, shielded from our surveillance." "Impossible," Telzar insisted. "Our monitoring satellites covered their entire planet, every orbital facility, every outpost in their system." "Clearly not thoroughly enough," Vorzax snapped. "Either we missed something crucial, or," he paused, a disturbing thought forming, "or they knew we were watching." Zalax finished for him, and they deliberately concealed their true capabilities. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans had detected Zrakarian surveillance and managed to hide their technological advancements, they were far more sophisticated than anyone had believed. "What do we know about this quantum displacement technology?" Vorzax asked, turning to Zalax. The science director activated a holographic display showing the energy readings from the human vessels. "Based on what we've observed, they found a way to manipulate the quantum state of macro-level objects, entire ships and their contents, simultaneously. In theory, this allows them to select a specific configuration of particles that places their vessels at any coordinates they choose, within certain range limitations." "Can we counter it?" Krell asked. Zalax's scales darkened to a deep blue, the Zrakarian equivalent of a regretful headshake. "Not with our current technology. We can detect the energy buildup before displacement occurs, but we have no way to prevent it or predict where they'll reappear." Vorzax stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. "So they can essentially teleport their entire fleet anywhere within our formation at will." "Yes, Supreme Commander. And there's more." Zalax brought up new data streams. "Preliminary analysis suggests their ships are capable of linking their displacement fields. They could potentially move our vessels along with theirs." The implications were staggering. The humans could, in theory, displace Zrakarian warships directly into a star, or deep space, or perhaps even into solid matter. "We need to communicate this to the High Council immediately," Krell said, her voice tight with tension. "This changes everything." Vorzax nodded grimly. "Indeed it does. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zrakarian Empire faces a technological superior." When the strategy session ended, Vorzax returned to the bridge to find that a secure communication channel had been established between the inevitable dominants and the human flagship, now identified as the Horizon. "Supreme Commander," Captain Chen greeted him. "Admiral Jackson, and I have been authorized by the United Earth Alliance to discuss preliminary terms for peaceful relations." Vorzax noticed that while many of the human ships had maintained their positions surrounding the Zrakarian fleet, a significant number had disappeared, presumably having displaced elsewhere. A show of good faith, perhaps, or simply a tactical repositioning. "I am authorized to listen to your terms," Vorzax replied carefully. "However, I must stress that any formal agreements will require approval from the High Council." Admiral Jackson nodded. "Understood. We propose the following: a mutual recognition of territorial boundaries, exchange of scientific and cultural attaches, and a non-aggression pact lasting a minimum of 20 Earth years, approximately 15 of your cycles." Reasonable terms, Vorzax thought, especially given that the humans could likely obliterate his entire fleet if they chose. But there was still the matter of how they had achieved such advancement. "Before we proceed, I must ask, how did your species develop this technology? Our observations indicated you were centuries away from such capabilities." Jackson and Chen exchanged glances. Then, surprising Vorzax, they laughed, a sound rarely heard during first contact situations. "Supreme Commander," Chen said, "humanity detected your surveillance satellites within months of their deployment. We've been aware of Zrakarian observation for over 15 years. Vorzak's felt his scales tighten against his body, a Zrakarian expression of shock. Impossible. Our stealth technology is undetectable to primitive sensors. Perhaps to conventional sensors, Jackson replied, but not to quantum entanglement detectors, which we developed shortly after detecting anomalous gravitational disturbances in Earth orbit. Zilax hissed in surprise. You've mastered quantum entanglement observation as well. It was actually the breakthrough that led to the displacement drive, Chen explained. Once we understood how to detect and manipulate entangled particles across vast distances, we realized we could theoretically entangle the position of macroscopic objects. We knew we were being watched, Jackson continued, and we suspected why. Earth's history is filled with examples of technologically superior civilizations, subjugating those they deemed primitive. We weren't about to let that happen to humanity. Vorzak's felt a newfound respect building for these humans. They had not only detected Zrakarian surveillance, but had used it to their advantage, presenting a facade of primitive development while secretly preparing for this very confrontation. So the technological progression we observed, a carefully constructed show, Chen confirmed. While our public space programs advanced at what you considered a normal rate, our classified research divisions were making exponential leaps in quantum physics. We even built decoy facilities to draw your attention, Jackson added with a slight smile. While you were monitoring our advanced ion propulsion tests, we were perfecting the displacement drive in underground facilities shielded from your sensors. Strategic Overseer Krell, who had joined Vorzak's on the bridge, couldn't contain her admiration. A masterful deception. You used our own arrogance against us. We prefer to think of it as prudent security, Chen replied diplomatically. Now shall we discuss those terms? 3 days later, Vorzak stood before the holographic projection of the Zrakarian High Council, having delivered his report on the human encounter. This is unprecedented, High Counselor Drezex declared, his ancient scales shifting between colors of concern and contemplation. No species has ever developed technology so far beyond our own, especially not one we had classified as primitive. The humans are unique, High Counselor, Vorzak's replied. They developed in isolation, their planet's high gravity and atmospheric composition forcing evolutionary adaptations that gave them extraordinary resilience and cognitive flexibility. And they deceived us completely, Counselor Mithras added, her tone carrying both irritation and reluctant respect. They did, Vorzak's acknowledged. But I believe their terms are reasonable, given the circumstances. They could have launched a preemptive strike against our empire at any time. Instead, they chose diplomacy. The council chambers fell silent as the 12 most powerful Zrakarians in the galaxy considered the situation. What guarantee do we have that they won't use this technology against us in the future? Counselor Jax finally asked. None beyond their word, Vorzak admitted. But I spent significant time with their leaders now, and I believe them when they say they seek peaceful coexistence. They're explorers at heart, not conquerors. Like we once were, Drezex murmured, so quietly that only those closest to him heard. After hours of deliberation, the High Council reached its decision. The Zrakarian Empire would accept the human terms, establishing formal diplomatic relations with the United Earth Alliance. Moreover, they would propose a scientific exchange focused specifically on quantum technologies, a field where the humans had clearly surpassed them. As Vorzak prepared to deliver the Council's response, he received a private message from Captain Chen. Supreme Commander, she said when he accepted the transmission in his quarters, I wanted to share something with you before our formal meeting tomorrow. What is it, Captain? Chen's expression was serious but not unkind. The quantum displacement drive isn't our only technological breakthrough. We've developed several others that we didn't feel necessary to reveal during our initial encounter. Vorzak felt a chill run down his spine. Such as directed energy weapons that operate on principles your scientists haven't yet discovered, defensive systems that can render our ships virtually invulnerable to conventional attacks, medical technology that can extend human lifespans threefold. Why tell me this now? Vorzax asked, genuinely curious. Chen smiled slightly. Because I believe you're different from some of your colleagues. You see us as equals despite our physical differences. You recognize that advancement isn't just about age or tradition. It's about innovation and adaptation. She leaned closer to the camera. The truth is, Supreme Commander, humanity doesn't want to dominate the galaxy. We want to explore it, understand it, and yes, protect ourselves within it. But we've studied enough of your empire's history to know that not all Zrikarians share your perspective. You're warning me, Vorzax realized. I'm informing a respected counterpart, Chen corrected gently. The terms we've proposed are generous precisely because we want peace. But should certain factions within your empire decide that humanity remains a threat to be eliminated? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Vorzax nodded slowly. I understand, Captain. And I appreciate your candor. After the transmission ended, Vorzax stood at the viewport of his quarters, gazing out at the human vessels still positioned throughout his fleet. What had once seemed like primitive, insignificant ships now represented a power that could fundamentally alter the balance of the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the Zrikarian Empire had expanded unchecked, classifying, categorizing, and often subjugating other species based on their perceived value or threat. They had become complacent in their superiority, arrogant in their assessments. And then humanity had appeared, having quietly observed their observers, having developed technology that defied Zrikarian understanding, having prepared for a confrontation they hoped would never come. As Vorzax prepared to formalize the first truly equal alliance the Empire had ever entered, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these remarkable humans might have in store. And for the first time in his long career, he found himself excited rather than threatened by the prospect of discovering the answer. The age of unquestioned Zrikarian dominance had ended. A new era of cooperation, genuine cooperation between equals, was about to begin. And perhaps, Vorzax reflected, that was exactly what the Empire had needed all along.